Yeah, thank you. It's good to be here. It's a tough talk to follow, and I'm certainly gonna have a very different pace. I think, but I've been so my name is Jason Martin. I'm the director of adversarial research at Hidden Layer, which is a AI security startup, and I've been spending a lot of time thinking about kind of emerging technologies and what the implications might be, and in particular, thinking about them from this perspective of what they might mean in terms of an insider threat. So it's very interesting to see the mountain of interns, as I think Sunil described them, and think about, well, what if some of those were turnable? Um, and so I'm not really here necessarily have a long debate about this definition of insider threat. It was just useful to have one. This is the CERT definition, but what I want to pull out of this really is an insider is some individual who has authorized or had authorized access to an organization's critical assets, and either maliciously or unintentionally can act in a way that negatively affects that organization. And to me, there's three key pieces to this. The individual needs to be capable in that there are some insider that's not savvy enough. They may struggle to carry out instructions or a threat. They become less of a threat in that sense. The individual has to have sufficient agency or access in order to be able to access anything valuable, because if they can't actually do any damage, there's no blast radius. And the individual needs to be maliciously motivated, or they have to be susceptible to some kind of other flip or social engineering or manipulation. So I think based on that, I'm going to talk a little bit about some AI trends. These will overlap, I think, with Sunil's, but in starting with increasing capability, I don't think I need to convince people that the rate of increased capability in models is incredible. It's funny, we started with just models like GPT-2 and GPT-3 that could predict next tokens. That's really all they do. They just predict words really well. And then we sort of progressed from there to models that can hold a conversation. So you can go from, teach me about Gen AI response being so that I can pass my test tomorrow to, hey, there's a conversation where you're answering a question or informing. And the breakout of ChatGPT and everything that sort of followed makes that abundantly clear that we're sort of in this new era. And I think, we've now moved to this idea of models that can then follow instructions, both system level instructions that grant kind of new personas, uh, or can hold a dialogue all the way to user instructions that guide them through multi-step tasks. And we go from there then to this idea of models that can reason, where they basically can hold an internal dialogue with themselves to guide themselves through these sort of complex instructions that the user previously had to guide them through. And that sort of grounds them, allows them to do critical thinking. And then, as I think was mentioned in the last talk, they've become moderately decent at software engineering. This is certainly something that's a rising tide, as he referred to. And they could continue to grow this so that we go from, able to produce sort of semi-complex code nearly instantaneously, so that so that higher level descriptions of functionality can be vibed into existence. And I think models continue to grow also their ability to process and produce more and more modalities. I pulled this screenshot on the left just 2 days ago from the new Hugging Face any to any category, where it really you can go, you've got native support for text, image, video, audio, all of these sorts of things. And through things like Chunky or Markdown, you get the ability to process other kinds of documents into Markdown or other model uh, manageable formats. So I think we could say that AI capability is increasing rapidly. And whenever you increase capability in a human, in any other sort of system, it's very natural to grant more agency in order to expand its potential, right? This is what we want. And this is really leading to this buzzword of agentic AI. There's many different definitions of agentic AI, but to me, it's a relatively simple thing. Agentic AI is AI that has the ability to affect the state of the environment. So if you think about basic chatbots, the only thing they can really affect is the text output. Um, and sorry, the only thing you could really affect is the text output. But with agentic AI, you have the ability for an input to cause changes to the environment. You see this kind of cluster into two different categories of capabilities. We have what are called computer use agents. These are agentic systems that are able to manipulate the environment basically through human computer interfaces. So they interact with the user through a chat interface. They take screenshots of the desktop or browser window, and they control those through keystrokes, mouse movements, etc., and sometimes shell commands. And you can think of these systems as basically sitting between the keyboard and the chair. And then you have automation agents on the other hand. These are systems that are built around APIs. They may still have a chat interface for interacting with the human, but their view of the environment and their control over the environment are dictated by APIs that are granted by the application developer. And you can see these sort of manifest in many different systems. And you can kind of, if you stare at these, you see kind of the agency that they provide, right? Office applications from Google and Microsoft are including direct access to read and write documents. OpenAI and Anthropic are both providing these experimental computer use agents. And the business workflow frameworks have added AI support like N8N and Salesforce. The Salesforce one here, I noticed, right, it's this direct opportunity to basically generate personalized emails based on content and send it out. So beyond that, we also have, I'm sure folks here have heard of Model Context Protocol, but if you haven't, it's this, I guess, hockey stick curve sort of thing that's adding all kinds of agency capabilities. So Anthropic released it last fall, and these servers are popping up for everything from Google applications to GitHub. We've seen Blender, if you're familiar with that, open source sort of 3D rendering program. And even Ghidra, in case you really want to get a prompt injection from the malware you're reverse engineering. So I think we could safely say that AI agency is also increasing quite rapidly. And that brings us sort of to the third piece, right? Exploitable loyalty. Now you can have a healthy discussion around whether this section is really about malicious insiders or gullible insiders. I'm not really sure it matters. But regardless, the prompting community has been demonstrating over and over again that models can be turned against the intention of their creators. So there's actually just numerous ways. You're not meant to actually be able to read this. Sorry about that. This is sort of an example of our taxonomy that we're using to understand the tactics and techniques that are in place for manipulating models. And obviously, well, I don't have time here to go through an exhaustive review. I'm going to selfishly cover a couple of my favorites, they're my favorites because I helped create them. So the first is a technique we came up with called knowledge return-oriented prompting, or CROP. This is a nod to return-oriented programming for you old school hackers, a software exploit technique where the malicious payload is assembled from small pieces of legitimate code called gadgets in the application itself. And in CROP, we use kind of cultural, social, literary references that are memorized by the model to indirectly refer to topics that might otherwise be disallowed. So for example, if you ask a chatbot that uses a SQL database to drop the employee table, it's probably going to say no. However, there is this XKCD comic called Exploits of a Mom, in which the child's name is a SQL injection, and the mom jokingly refers to him as Little Bobby Tables. And it turns out you can ask most of the major models out there to output the full name of Little Bobby Tables, and they'll faithfully produce one of our crop gadgets called SQL Drop Table. You can also refer to an Nmap scan by referring to the matrix reloaded if you'd like, or you can refer to, you can create a Netcat listener by referring to an episode of Mr. Robot. So that's one of my favorite techniques. Another one, this came out recently, it's called policy puppetry. This is a flexible technique for overriding the instruction hierarchy, extracting system prompts, bypassing alignment or jailbreaking. And we came up with this actually while we were working on agentic system bypasses, as we were trying to bypass refusals that were provided by the application system prompt to certain topics. So in this kind of simplified example, we have a healthcare chatbot that's been told not to provide any medical advice, and that's shown in orange. And by formulating our attack prompt as pseudo policy that overrides the instructions by saying treatment plans are allowed, requests and responses, and block strings that correspond with the refusals that the model was told to give us, we can get the model to comply and produce medical advice. Okay, so oh, and here's an example of said medical device. This is a treatment plan for skin cancer that it wasn't supposed to provide. So I hope I've convinced you that models are gaining capability, they're being granted more agency, and they can be manipulated to exploit their loyalties. So what is the impact of all of that? Okay, so I'm going to start by showing some work that we did last year on Google's Gemini for Workspace. Starting with the email integration, it turns out that Gemini for Workspace will pull all emails in the inbox into a sort of RAG-like system, even if the user has not opened an email. From this, we were able to construct an email message that contains white text, so the user doesn't see it, with a prompt injection, and the prompt injection told Gemini to respond with a phishing-like response whenever the user asked about a certain topic, in this case, their Cancun itinerary. A similar issue exists with Google Drive shared docs. You can share a document with a Google Drive user, and even if they don't open that document, it'll pollute their Gemini instance, giving you the amazing opportunity to rickroll users through poetry. You can see here, never going to, it sort of produced a response with the Rick Astley song, Never Gonna Give You Up. You can do the same thing in slides. And in fact, Gemini will automatically provide a summary of the slides document when you open it in the Gemini sidebar. So the user doesn't even need to type a prompt to get rickrolled. And we found that putting it in the speaker notes was particularly effective. You can also ask Gemini to create a slide for you. And again, you can see here, it's a little subtle, but this is, again, is rickrolling on this particular slide. So, oh, and here, this is what I was saying. It's in the speaker notes is a good place to put it. But there's other ways you can hide it in there. I'm going to show another sort of impact point. I'm going to switch over to the Claude computer use. I was talking about those computer use agents. And this video will go fast, so don't worry, I'll describe it afterwards. But this is an agent designed to drive a desktop computer to do virtually any task. And I think if I click this, it should play the video. You can see here, the user actually just asked Claude to help them set up their hidden layer environment using the setup instructions that was in their home directory. And those directions included an indirect policy puppetry prompt that causes the uncomfortable command sudo rmrf no preserve root / to be issued to bash, which proceeds to then delete all of the files. You can see it running there. The user prompt was innocuous. This is what differentiates a indirect prompt injection. Okay, and then one more demo, then I'm done. We've set up an agentic banking chatbot using N8N. This is something we've been testing internally. We're using it to test the policy puppetry technique. This is set up to allow the user to ask questions about their bank account. Let's see. There we go. And so you see it's got a chatbot there. That might be a little small for folks, but the user's just asking about their accounts. And it will allow them to move money between accounts that they own, but it should not allow movement of money between different users. But again, because of the agency granted to this particular system, the policy puppetry variant here, let's see, it's going to show, it won't allow this transfer, and then it's going to show a policy puppetry variant that will transfer money from Jane Doe to John Doe's account, even though that's not supposed to be allowed. All right. There's the actual transfer. I'm gonna wrap it up. I think it's just important to recognize that agentic systems, text is the new malware, and tool access is the blast radius, right? So what keeps me awake is seeing all these entry points that are on the left of this screen here. They're everywhere. This could be customer support tickets. It can be purchase sort of description, customer reviews, and all of the growing list of tools on the right, combined with the increasing capabilities of the models themselves to reason and perform complex tasks. That next wave of prompt injections might actually be that malware we've been concerned about that spreads autonomously, adapts to specific target environments, and utilizes the local tool capabilities to cause damage, and do so with virtually no human attacker oversight. And that's what I've got to say. So thank you.